Okay, so Edouard, you have been involved in almost every 3D printed construction project here in Dubai, from working with companies I visited like Cobod, CyBe, now Twente Additive Manufacturing. We saw the Big 5 event. So today we're going to discuss a lot of these different projects, and you have a really unique perspective because you're one of the few people that's worked with multiple different companies as opposed to just having one narrow perspective of just a couple projects. So what was your first exposure to 3D printed construction? Let's start there.
Right. Well, when we started 3DVinci in 2014 in Dubai, we started with plastic printing, let's say. And at the time, concrete printing was non-existent. And there were less than a handful of companies doing concrete printing. And then we got contacted by DEWA, which is the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority. And they were looking into 3D concrete print. They wanted to 3D print a building at their R&D drone lab in Solar Park, Dubai, part of their innovation initiative. And so what we did was we started looking around. We said, it's a challenge, let's see if we can do it. So we started looking around, and we contacted a few companies at the time. We're talking about 2015. So we contacted a few companies, and we came up with CyBe. So we contacted CyBe at the time, and we started discussing the potential of building now. Remember, at that time, no one has done such scale printing on site, in situ. I mean, there were some projects perhaps by Winsun that were done in China, but nothing in an uncontrolled environment.
Sure. In
the middle of the desert. And you have a client, and with the whole setup. We're not printing this project for us as a proof of concept. It was a project with the client, and you had the designers and the contractors and the subcontractors and everybody involved in this project. So it was a challenge at the time, actually. And that's how we started with concrete printing. We took it from there. We worked with the local contractor here. CyBe provided the technology. We provided the overall project management, and that was our start into concrete printing.
So that was a very young CyBe as well. They were, I'm sure they've grown and changed a lot since then, just like 3DVinci has. But back then, can you describe the project you were working on, and then maybe get into some of the things that went well, some of the things that didn't go so well?
Absolutely. You're right. CyBe, even at that time, they were pretty young. They were just starting with the technology as well. So we visited them in Oss, in the Netherlands, and we got to meet the team there. Got to see the robot and their work, etc. And actually, at the time, to be quite honest, they were the only one who were responsive to our request. They were pretty enthusiastic and aggressive, and they really wanted to get this project going. So we worked with them and the contractor here. Most of the problem, actually, the project went well. We finished the project. We delivered. It was delivered on time, in a sense. The project consisted of a 160 square meter building with it's one floor G with the parapet, and the height of the building was about 4 meters. Plus add on top of that the parapets. We used the robotic printer that CyBe had at the time, so it was shipped from the Netherlands here, and we shipped all the material, etc. So what went well was that the project got executed. So we delivered, CyBe delivered, we delivered, everybody delivered. So the project, from that perspective, was good. First, correct, and on site in Dubai. I mean, there was a project that was done as part of the Office of the Future before us, maybe 2 years, I think in 2014. Winsun, but it was printed in China and shipped over and assembled here. The major requirement from DEWA, from the client, was that it has to be in situ, not even on site. So you had to put the printer there, etc. And so, we're printing in March at that time, and it's really hot. It's hot in March or April in Dubai, so we had to erect a tent. That was one of the challenges, so additional cost to the project. So we put a tent with the environmental control, water control, everything, you know, humidity, the temperature inside the tent, and all of the stuff. Really, the major, I would say if you want, there are a lot of good things that happen and bad things that happen in that particular project, of course. But I think if you want to put a headline, I would say a clash of culture, and I think a clash of and not setting the right expectation.
Mm-hmm.
I think many people, probably until now, still view 3D printing, 3D concrete printing.
As a click button and go.
Correct, absolutely, and there's a big mistake there, and not only in concrete, actually, even in plastics. You know, still it's there's a lot of misunderstanding of the technology, and I think many of the 3D printing companies have actually helped create this wrong illusion about concrete printing. We'll talk about this also.
Some false pretenses.
Absolutely, yeah, cost and all, and speed and all of this stuff. So there was a clash of culture primarily, meaning that you were working with old existing techniques and processes and project management and materials and everything. And yet here you have a new technology, a new process, a new approach. And so to be able to explain to the different stakeholders in the project, it was a bit difficult, really. The contractor, you know, I mean, they come from old school construction. Mm-hmm. The labs even doing, you know, sampling of the material. How do you do sample and measure it? And so how do you measure? How do you measure a concrete, 3D printed concrete? How do you take the sample? The sampling scheme, all of this stuff. So there was these were still are actually, but at that time it was very challenging.
And with that project, did you need to chill the water before it ran through the machine?
Yes, we did.
What was your strategy?
We just used a bucket of ice. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't. I wouldn't say temperature controlled. I would just say cooled water. So because we're in the middle of the desert, so the water that was provided just was bathing under the sun. And the other thing that was done also was printing at night. So most of the printing was happening, even inside the tent, was happening usually from 8 p.m. till 5 a.m. the second day.
Was the tent something you anticipated for the project?
Yes, it was definitely. Unless you can't control the time schedule of the entire project. So when it came to having the print, initially actually the project was supposed to be executed in February, but we had some design issues and some trying to get approvals from the different authorities on the design itself. The project, honestly, all in all, was completely over-engineered. I mean, everybody was afraid that the structure would fall. It's an office that is occupied. I mean, people are actually working there. It's not a show and tell. So understandingly, the contractor and the client wanted to make sure that it's a fully fortified building. It was so over-engineered. It's crazy. There's so much steel in that building that. So that was one of the issues, and then even after when we finished the project, we had issues with the cracks that need to be corrected, and and we worked on these as well.
Did those cracks emerge right after the concrete set?
Yes, very fast.
Okay, and was there anything unexpected? Did you run into many unforeseen circumstances?
There was a lot, but I would say. The majority were, one of the issues was, for example, the material that was shipped from to here from the Netherlands. I think until now we don't really know what happened, but it wouldn't work from the onset. And then I think CyBe had to dial the parameters properly to make it work. So there was a lot of iterations in terms of doing the proper setup. So what was working at CyBe in the Netherlands did not work here. Mm-hmm. Now we had the theory that perhaps the material was sitting in the sun for a long time and maybe got damaged, or so usually in these kind of circumstances, perhaps one of the lessons learned, let's say, is to ensure that whatever material you bring in, that you put it in a shed or a somewhat controlled environment as well. So that was a big one because it delayed the project by several weeks.
And there was a big learning curve there, I'm sure. If there's anything you can point out that you learned from that project that you brought to the future projects, is there anything particularly the most valuable lesson you got from it?
Yeah, select the right people to work with. No, really, it's very important to, whether it's a contractor or the technology provider or even the client, setting up the expectations and being truthful at the beginning of the project is key. Because I think many people go into the project, to 3D printing in concrete, and they are completely, their expectations are completely off.
Yeah, that's why I love doing these kind of conversations with people like you, because we're not selling the technology. We're kind of like, you are a buyer of the technology, and so you're able to be objective and say things without the marketing sheen on top. So that was the first project that you did here in Dubai, and then what was the second project you move on?
Yeah, the second project was after this project we kept looking into. There weren't too many, let's say, still the awareness of 3D concrete printing at that time was still not as high, although there's a decree by his Sheikh, by His Highness Sheikh Muhammad, that he wanted 25% of all buildings be 3D printed by year 2030. Even with that, there was still, not a lot of awareness about 3D printing, although we were getting requests from here and there. And then we got contacted by a major developer here, Edouard, who were looking into, and others actually, but Edouard was one of them, that they're interested in looking into the technology. So it's one of their innovation, key innovation driver at the company. And at the time, we decided that for robotic printing is good for a single robot, is good for certain, let's say, printing structures. But we felt that it's probably not the best adequate for building, for 3D printing buildings. Mm-hmm. So we started at the time after the project with DIWA, we started looking into different technologies. And so we got hold of Cobod at the time. And again, they were starting, they had the Bod 1 at the time. And so with Cobod, we brought the Bod 1 to Dubai, to Jabal Ali, to showcase it to the different people here in Dubai. And one of the clients that came was Amar. I think they wanted to take this further. And so we also worked with them. There was a project that was, we had meetings with designers, and they wanted to understand, architects who wanted to understand what can the technology do from a design perspective. So we also went with all the different, overhangs and curves and all of the stuff, and sizes and everything. And so then Amar floated a bid to 3D print a villa in one of their big communities that they are developing, Arabian Ranches 3. And we bid on the project and we won it at that time. So we're looking at 2019. So that was almost
4 years later.
3 years later, right?
Okay.
After the 2016.
When was the first project printed?
2016.
Okay.
So 3 years later, yeah. But the bid was in 2015, but the execution then was done in 2016, right?
Okay, so 2019, you're printing the Amar Villa with
Amar. Same thing, except this one has a bigger scope. The project had certain benchmarks. I mean, a company like Amar was looking at, because they are such a big developer, they're looking at what do we get from this technology. Mm-hmm. And again, this is probably the right approach. They wanted to see what are the capabilities that you can do with 3D printing, what are the costs associated with it, what are the benefits, what's the add-ons, what are, all of this stuff. So the project was loaded with a whole lot of people.
Was their goal to do it as cost effectively as possible? Because there's so much construction in Dubai that's like over the top, and they build bigger, more beautiful than they have to. They're not concerned about cost. So in my mind, a company like that might want to do it as a showcase, and so not so concerned about the price, more concerned about we were the first to build a house in Dubai. But it sounds to me like you're saying it was a research project for them.
It's not the research, no. It's probably a combination of all of the things that you said. In my opinion, they were looking into really exploring the technology as an alternative to standard construction, or as an add-on to standard construction. And I think that what they were looking for is this technology truly, well, it's advertising itself to be faster, better, cheaper. So that was what they were looking at. And I think in the discussion we can talk about all of these things, and we can discuss the issues of faster, better, and cheaper. So that was their primary goal, actually, and it was in their set mind that I think if this is something that they find, if they get 2 out of 3, is it faster and better, then maybe they will overlook the cheaper. If it is cheaper, and so you see what I mean. So they were trying to sort of position it within the framework of standard construction, as well as to say, look, this is probably the first 3D printed commercial villa in the world. It's something that you build and you sell to a client. At that time, no one has really done anything like this. Everything was show and tell, but they wanted to print a villa and sell it to a client.
That time period of 2019 was also kind of peak fake news in the industry, where so many different companies were putting out videos of like 24-hour house or $10,000 house, $4,000 house. I think since then, people who have dug into it further have realized that's not the case anymore. It never was the case, but back then especially, and that was kind of when I discovered it. It was like 2017 when all those videos came out. I don't want to name any companies, but there were at least 2 videos in 2017 that got tens of millions of views across all platforms, Facebook, YouTube. And then I'm sure you, having completed and being involved in the industry, completed the building with Edouard, probably were inundated with messages, people asking about cheap housing, affordable.
True. I think that there was. It was. I think that the 3D printing, concrete printing, is guilty of its own making sometimes. We had issues also here in Dubai where, again, I'm not gonna mention the name of the company. I think everybody knows that company. They came here. We were gonna 3D print the first skyscraper, and you're talking back in 2016, 17. Technology was not there. So again, there was a lot of wrong set mind that was there, wrong advertising. You're right, and I think that the clients, at the end of the day, that's what they were looking at. Well, they did it in somewhere in the US or somewhere. They built a house for $5,000. But when you provide the numbers to them, and you provide what's involved in the technology and more details, then they realize that this is a pipe dream at this point. So yeah, it was a challenge for us to convince them about the numbers, and honestly, but again, they were looking at faster, better, and cheaper, right? So if you get 2 out of 3 in any business, in any technology, then you have a fighting chance. If you get all 3, that's it. You have a blockbuster, right? You get a real good business. So that's what we're working on right now, is to get it better, faster, and cheaper. And if you want to discuss any of these items, for this project, then we can do that.
Yeah, definitely, all 3.
Okay. All right. So cheaper, no, at this point, and but again, you have to be careful how you look at the numbers. And I'm not gonna go do this, playing with numbers to really say that we have the main 2 issues in the cheaper part is still the cost of the material. And I'm talking about all of the material providers. I'm not gonna mention names. all of the cement mixes out there that are by major multinationals, either it's expensive or it cannot be sourced at the location. So, and then they have to ship it, and shipping it just costs an arm and a leg. It's more expensive than the cement. So the mix is still up there. And in my opinion, if the mix can get at within 20 to 30% of existing OPC cement, then it would definitely be cheaper without any funny, accounting. And it's also not cheaper because the cost of the technology is still high. So the printers in general are still expensive. Availability of printer is still limited. So from that perspective, it is still more expensive than traditional construction, especially in countries like the GCC, Dubai and the region, because the labor cost here is so low.
And the local sand is not usable for concrete.
It's not yet. But I think there's somebody screaming that this is one of the things why we are established here, is to be able to develop material that are for the local market. No one has done it yet, although someone is claiming that they've used sand. Yeah, I think I'll get you the name. But someone has claimed that they did some work in Saudi Arabia and were able to use local sand for 3D printing, to use it in 3D printing. But I think if you talk to all cement producers or all mixed producers, their justification of the high prices, it's a special batch. It's not part of their standard production. The way they produce it, the way they how to store it, the way they bag it, and all of this stuff.
They don't mention the cement concentration?
They don't know. Well, some they do. I mean, when you ask for the data sheet, they provide a range of concentration. So they give you 20 to 40%, which is ridiculous. But I mean, they will not. They will give you the constituents of the cement. I think it's by law they have to do that, but they will not tell you what the actual mix is.
So the material cost, I mean, if you're lucky from what I've seen, and you happen to be in a location where they're producing it and the shipping costs aren't exorbitant, you're paying maybe double the traditional cement cost. In most cases, it's like 4 times up to like 10 times the
Correct.
traditional cement cost.
Correct. Usually, we're not finding any, and I'm talking about the big producers, the global producers. The local producers who are, they haven't really done any in-house development of this yet, although we've been approached the big 5 by many of them, and I think we're going to work with them and see if they can produce this at an affordable price. But you're right, it's at least 4 times, not even 2 times, so it's at least 4 times. And most of them, some do produce it locally, but it's still more expensive than it is produced, let's say, in their major production facilities in Europe or US or elsewhere.
Especially the local, smaller concrete companies, I can't imagine they have any R&D budget. They're probably operating on pretty slim margins. They're not investing in researching new concrete. Concrete's thousands of years old. They figure it's the same thing it's been. So it's maybe new to them to have to experiment with new mixes.
That's true. And they talk to like in Big 5 because they also don't have access to a printer, and they usually don't even know where to start, and it's really outside their comfort zone. They're outside, like you said. Usually it's a family business or so, and so they to come and say 3D printing. So what they want to do is give us the material, test it on our printer or printers, but it's a long process this way. It's not gonna really work. It may work, I don't know. We have tested some materials that we developed ourselves. It has certain merits, it can work, but again, we're relying on these big companies to produce. If this technology, if 3D printing gonna go anywhere, this is a key element, is that you have to have access locally in any country to produce cement that is 3D printable. at affordable price. Otherwise, it's just going to be, the material is just so expensive.
Sure. So working with Cobod on that project, granted it's the Bod 1, now they're on the Bod 2.5, they made improvements. Pretty much every part is like not unrecognizable, but very different from how it was back then. That being said, at the time, what were some of the nice parts of working with Cobod? What were some of the challenges of working with Cobod?
Yeah, at the time we worked with the Bod 1 initially, and then we worked with the Bod 2 for the project.
Okay.
So the Bod 2, the printer was the largest printer that they produce, and I think it's still the largest printer that they produce. It's the one in Saudi Arabia. The major thing about using this printer is it's a big bulky printer. So you have these columns, large columns that you have to erect.
With precision.
With very precision, exactly. And when you're doing, again, the same thing, we're doing this project on site, in situ, in the middle of the desert, in September-October timeframe, very hot, like you see now. So again, we had to provide a tent. Now, providing a tent for such a big printer the tent probably costs as much as the printing itself. So providing the tent with the temperature control was also a challenge. The main issue was, but in this case it was a bit better because we set the expectations for everybody because of the previous experience with the DIWA project. So we set the expectation, although still the contractor wasn't. You can't expect them because they had, again, it's a very big contractor with old processes, everything in place. Now you're coming and you're disrupting their processes and organizational hierarchy and all of this in this particular project. The good thing is the client was really wanted this project to happen. So they were really involved, engaged, step by step in every project, as well as all of the range of consultants. So they had a bunch of cost consultants, design consultants. So everybody was there because, like I said, it's a benchmark project for AMR.
It's funny to have so many people consulting on something that's so new that nobody has any experience with it.
True, and they learned a lot. Everybody learned a lot, including us. So come back to the Bod 2 issues. Again, it took a long time to set up and get the project going because it was the first. One of it was because it was their first Bod 2 to produce. There were issues primarily with the pumping system. There were issues with the hose management system. I don't want to get into too many of the details, but there were a lot of technical issues that were there. But I'm sure that, I don't know, with the 2.5 they may have solved these issues. There were issues with stopping and starting the print. There were issues with alignment sometimes, but it's not strictly because of the printer itself, but primarily. When you're working with existing construction methodologies, usually the tolerances are much lower than with 3D printing. A printer is accurate to sub-millimeter. Yeah. Whereas when manual labor, usually they can tolerate 5-6 millimeters, and so we're having a lot of these issues where the printer is going and then it's hitting things and stuff. But in general, also we did the project, we delivered on time as well. I cannot say too many. There was the whole list of what to do and what not to do, not a whole list of lessons learned from all aspects: architectural, design, MEP, how you deal with the different entities and stakeholders in the project. One of the major issues, for example, is taking 2D and then turning them into 3D and making sure that it's correct. It's the right final design that they're working on. And then you have discrepancies, and there are things that in general in projects, in construction projects, there's always changes in the project. You know that.
Yeah, that's where they, especially, I don't know about Dubai, but in America, that's where contractors make their profit. They bid low, then they find everything they can to complain about.
Absolutely.
And that's where they have their margins and everything. So when you tell me the contractors are kind of giving you a hard time, complaining, saying it's a new technology, in my mind, it's almost part of their business model. They're experts at finding things to complain about, and when it's something brand new, there's like so much opportunity for them to practice their expertise.
True. This is one of them, and the other one also is actual design changes. So the client and the designers, let's change the window here, let's change. And one of the problems you're using a large printer is you cannot easily accommodate for some of these changes. So we were having some issues that we couldn't perform using the Cobod, and we had to sort of find a way around it. But this is primarily what the primary issues were.
So maybe the solution to that is printing some parts not in place and then moving them.
That's what we did, correct.
So I'm just going to speculate here. Maybe you can't say whether I'm correct or not, but with a pump, if your pump's not powerful enough, especially if you're using a really long hose, once you get higher up, it's harder to push that material through the hose as you get to higher heights. So maybe if they didn't have a strong enough pump, as they were printing the top layers, the material would clog more frequently and be harder to push through.
Correct. We had to reconfigure the pump actually because it wasn't working, and one of them was that reason. So we're looking at the villa had a almost 27-meter span from edge to edge. So if you had the pump, let's say, logically you'd say I'm gonna place the printer and the pump in the center so I can access. Not very smart, because again, when you reach, especially when you're up 3 meters in height, and now you're printing that wall at the back, you can see that it's not exactly pumping to that space. So we had to redo all of this. So we had to reposition the pump several times to make sure that, like you said, that the pump, that the concrete is getting to where it should on time. Some also of the one of the major issues when you work with these large printers, huge printers, is you cannot make a mistake with pumping. If you make a mistake and your hose is clogged or anything is clogged in the system, the downtime is absurd. And so when you promise your client that you're gonna finish this in 5 days, you have to make sure that you flush, you clean, you do your preventative maintenance, you do your work properly. You cannot make a mistake in the pumping if it stops for whatever reason.
Minus 1 day.
Sometimes more. Sometimes we would be down for 2 days because we had to get a new hose, or we have to, and then changing the hose is not a piece of cake. So all of these are the realities on the ground with 3D printing. Hopefully that these things are being resolved. But I think with every 3D printer out there, you still have these same issues. It will probably still be there. You have to have a contingency plan always available, and we designed our contingency plan, and so now we know next project what needs to be done. What you have to have additional accessories readily available, and what you should do between shifts. So even because we're working on 2 shifts, we were not able to work more than 2 shifts because at some point the printer has to be cleaned properly. The pumps have to be cleaned, the hoses have to be cleaned, the hopper.
8 hours or
8-hour shift. So there was a hand you have to put into. It's a manufacturing at the end of the day, and 3D printing is additive manufacturing. So you have to look at it more as a production rather than construction. And unless you start really looking at it from that perspective, and it's a machine. It's machine availability, machine downtime, all of the parameters that you look into any production facility, any manufacturing facility, these are the numbers that they look at, right? Industrial engineers. So sometimes this is the calculation that you have to be able to get to the proper numbers.
And then there's always increases in efficiency, especially when automation's involved. Maybe you install a new system, you're getting 100 units a month, and then after people learn how to use it, you're getting 150 units a month. The next year, you're getting 200 units a month from the same kind of equipment because people are becoming more skilled. And I'm not talking about 3D printed houses. Nobody's doing hundreds of units a month yet, but
right. That's a different. That's
like
another.
Tesla, for example, they projected their Shanghai factory to do like 200,000 cars, and now they're going to do 400,000 this year in Shanghai because they learned how to use the systems better. Their employees know what they're doing. They're not being trained anymore. So I guess I want to get into, if you were to have printed a second Amar Villa next to the one that you completed, what would be the percent improvement in terms of cost, time, and better, maybe not relative to traditional construction, but relative to just the 3D printed quality, quality of the lines, quality of the material being pumped? So start with time and budget and then quality.
Time, I think, look, we finished the project when we get things going.
Mm-hmm.
You know how it is in 3D concrete printing. Like I said, initially it started slow, really slow. We had a lot of issues, especially with the pump and all of these things and the calibration. But once we got going, I mean, we finished the villa really in 4 or 5 days. So that was good.
So could that be improved upon on the second?
Yes. So right now I say, from a time perspective, 2x easily.
Including the prep.
Including the prep, absolutely, yeah. And also the managing the maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
preventative maintenance primarily, the cleaning of all of the components, making sure that when shift is handing over to the next shift, that there's a proper handover process you have there.
What if you include the other subcontractors, the electrical, plumbing, window fitters, the roofing systems? Would that increase that 2x, or is that consistent?
It will not, no. With these, it will not be 2x, but it will be improved as well.
Because those guys, it was their first time working with it too, so they had a little bit of a learning curve as well.
Correct. What they did, with the Amar project, the way the MEP was approached was slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
The way the formwork was, because the way we did the columns was also in a different way. So all of these, yes, you can improve on, and you can improve the speed. What we did was we didn't finish the entire villa at once. So what we did was we did it in section 1 and section 2. Look, if you really want to improve all of these parameters, speed, cost, and everything, we have to be at the onset of the project, meaning at the design project. So what we do is, the way the villa is designed, the way the building is designed, if you want to optimize these 3 parameters, we have to tell you what to do. And then we say, okay, this is the printer that you need to use for this particular villa. And I suggest that you put the doors here and the windows there, so that as we're moving the printer, if it needs to be moved, or as we're moving the pump, if it needs to be moved, it's optimized.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you're gonna cast your roof, we'll tell, this is the best way, because while we're working on one section, you'd be casting there. This way, you speed up the entire process. But as a 3D printing service provider, we have to be there at the onset. Otherwise, if they do it sequentially the way they use it, in the way construction is done right now, it will still be clogged with inefficiencies.
So taking those time benefits into consideration, like people's hourly pay and such, what would the cost benefit be on the second mirrored project, the same kind of thing?
I would say, I haven't done the numbers, but I mean, we're working on the numbers with them. I would say significant. I would say more than 25%.
That is significant.
That is, in construction, is very significant.
And finally, the quality of the print.
Yes. Look, I mean, we were with the villa. We did get cracks. However, we didn't really, the source of the cracks. We were not sure, because when we had the tent and we were printing, and when we finished the entire project, there were hardly any cracks. I mean, really minor things. but then when we removed the tent and the villa was exposed to sun, and also it's a big community, it's a big project, and there were a lot of excavation and machinery around it, so there was a lot of vibration. Then cracks started to show up everywhere. Until now, we don't really know, and we got we got some consultants to come and see. Some of them blame it on vibration, some of them blame it on exposure to the sun, some of them on expansion. And again, that's another point about expansion where you have to have. We didn't have expansion joints, which was really stupid, but
it's basically every explanation you could have for a crack.
Yes, but true, but still, we don't know where this came from. All of these joints, all of these cracks. Sorry. But we fixed them, and they're okay now. If you tell me on the finish what you would do, we also had the horizontal cold joints. We had a lot of those with the printer because we were stopping and restarting, and you can see them. If you see the villa, you can see where these cold joints are.
But you used some adhesive between.
We did. We just applied adhesive right before we printed. And it was we used laticrete at the time for the material. It was their first initial 3D. I'm sure they've improved a lot since then. We used the M31.
Wow.
And so
they're on like M120.
120, yes. So we're gonna test it here in our warehouse in the next few days. So laticrete supplied us with the adhesive that we applied right before we print. But still, even whatever you do, you're still gonna have that. If you stop printing, the key of 3D, almost one of the keys of 3D concrete printing is, once you start, don't stop. It goes, just keep running until you finish your 3D print for that particular shift or for that particular day. Anytime you stop and you restart, I think you cannot truly avoid a cold joint. So the cold joints, the Dubai Municipality approved them. They didn't have issues with it. We did do some cross sections and we did do testing on them. They came out fine, in terms of compressive and flexural and tensile. So there was it wasn't a weakness point. Let's say everybody was afraid that it may be a weakness point structurally, so it wasn't. But in certain cases it does look sort of not nice, not appealing. So from a finished perspective right now, for my next project, I would definitely, the way I would define the printing toolpath and the printing strategy would be completely different. That's fine.
Okay. So would you work with Cobod again?
I mean, yes and no. The problem is I think the technology is limited to certain structures. I don't know where they are right now. I haven't looked at their 2.5 where they are with it, but there were quite a few limitations in terms of how you can incorporate changes in the printing. So once you start, once you design the villa or the house, if somewhere along the way there are changes that you need to do, incorporating because of the way the hopper is, and you cannot. So you have to either tear down the wall, or you cannot really work with it. The other thing is I don't know where they are with the hose management. There were big issues with how to manage the whole system. Pump. I think it's something that can be. I'm sure they rectified that problem with the pumps. Availability of material. There's a whole bunch of material. You can use laticrete, you can use Lafarge, you can use Heidelberg, any of this material, but all of them are expensive. In terms of the software, it's good, very, very, very elementary software, nothing specific to it. In terms of making complicated elements and structure, they're limited because of the hopper geometry. So there are some pluses and negatives, but in general, it's the main thing is if you're going to use that printer for one villa at a time, then it's fine, and you have enough space to use it. That's fine. If you're gonna do big projects, they have to overcome certain issues.
Because moving it is a challenge.
Correct.
Yeah, most of the things you mentioned, I know that they are working on addressing from when I was visiting with them in Denmark. But when I was in Virginia, I know they did have some hose management issues. It wasn't detrimental to the project, but they did need somebody holding the hose. It's big, heavy, could run and hit the tent, hit the print. Not that they weren't using a tent on the outside of that project, they just had a small like sports tailgating tent just to have a little table where they could have the computer so they weren't directly in the sun, like the people, not the print. But also the pumps that we have in America for some reason are subpar compared to pumps in Europe. I'm not sure if the better pumps are available in Dubai, but pumps are a bit of an issue. I'm hoping to visit a company in Houston that's making a better pump. We'll see. I don't want to mention them until I know that it's actually quality, but those are all things that can definitely be improved on, so that's very promising. And I guess you say yes and no. You don't want to work with Cobod again as their technology was, but if it was demonstrated that it had improved and addressed the issues, you'd be open to trying another project with them, I guess it sounds like.
Probably, it depends on, again, the project. For example, we were approached to do a multi-unit project here in Dubai. I wouldn't use them because the sheer amount of moving the printer and resetting and calibration and making sure that you have the leveled ground, to a certain level, you cannot. It makes it a bit difficult. If you want to do just one building somewhere where you have enough space and you can maneuver, then it's fine. The issues, like you said, they are manageable. The whole system and the pump. Yeah, we use mostly MTech or one of these German pumps. They're usually pretty good. But if you want to do multi-units, then it's a big issue.
I think the mobility is something they might be trying to address as well. We'll see what comes out of that. So, was there a third project you worked on before working with Twente, or?
Yeah, we did a project also using the Cobod, but we did a bench, a scriptic bench. So these are not your regular benches. These are benches that we use at the expo. And again, we used at the time the Cobod, but the design was so difficult that you would probably only use what you saw at the Big Five. That's the only printer that can actually print such intricate details, overhangs, and so we were not able, let's say, to produce what the client wanted, Expo 2020 organizers. But it was also one of the projects that we did with that printer.
Is it because of the printer or the material?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, you needed a robot for that. You cannot. There's no hopper that's gonna be able to do these. Really, I mean, they were like underhang and overhang and all of this stuff. So you needed something with six axis or 7 axis movement to be able to produce these. But it was a nice project. I wish I have the technology I have right now to be able to deliver, especially with this material that we're seeing. Yeah, at the time it wasn't available, so I couldn't deliver. But this is the other project that. The Cobod printer is for building for 1-2 houses, units, villas. It's okay. Yeah, obviously after I'm sure they've worked out some of these issues that I just discussed. But I think if for multi-unit projects, it's an issue. And sometimes these units, you can see if you go to the Arabian ranches, they're stuck to each other. So moving it is really. I mean, I was like, okay, if I want to put, where you put the different columns and all of the stuff. So it becomes a geometric nightmare sometimes for large projects.
When you say stuck to each other, you
know,
mean
like
physically?
Physically, the villas are, I mean, the distance between them, not just attached, even, the separation between them is not enough to allow you to move the printer properly. So that's one of the major issues. You also need the cranes to, to place it into play. So some of the overheads that add up to the cost, will also, it's not proper to do. It will just add to the cost for no reason.
So now, fast forward to today, you're working with Twente Additive Manufacturing. You've created the conglomerate TAM Vinci on your shirt. And how has that experience been?
Amazing. We've been in touch with Twente for some time right now. We actually, after the two projects, and it's funny that it happened this way, with CyBe, the robot, and then with Cobod, the gantry system. There are benefits and cons and pros and cons in each of these, and I think we discussed them briefly. So I was looking for I'm going to be very honest with you. I was looking for a company that is willing to work with both a robot and a gantry, to have mobility available, to have printers for the different build the application. Exactly. And I think Twente has at this point, and we research all the providers, technology providers, and I think Twente at this point are the only one who are providing different printers for the different applications. So they have and I think you've visited their facilities, they have the Tilikum, which is a mobile robotic unit, which can print very small units, very easy to maneuver, very easy to put it anywhere. And we're at the Big Five. You saw it was put in and out and all of the stuff. And you can print small structures, maybe 6x5, 4. So and these are usually, right now we're working on a project for a guard room, which is perfect. You don't have a lot of space, so you have to put it in an area where you cannot maneuver a lot. You don't want the very small robot because you have to keep moving it again. And you don't want the large gantry because it cannot fit. So this is perfect.
And the client wants something unique that's one of a kind, so you don't want to create form work that's going to be used just once.
Exactly. So this is what they want. They want, can you provide, these crazy shapes and all of this? We said yes. So that's one application and also, we want to work with a company who's honestly willing to put the effort to come and work with us here in the region to provide technology and material for that answers to the local requirements. Okay. One of them, you said the sand. Can we use this? I don't know. So someone has to come here and work with us to provide solutions for the local. Look, the requirements of buildings in Europe is different than. And I'm not talking about municipalities and authorities. I'm talking about, a house in Europe is different than a house here. The shape, the size. They may look for smaller houses there. Here they look for huge houses. I mean, they have the full range here, but so we wanted a localized solution. And from a business proposition, that made sense for both Twente and for us. They have deep knowledge of the technology. They have deep knowledge of what needs to be done. We have deep knowledge of the area and the service provision, and we're the only one who has actually a building system here with the municipality under our name. So we together, I think, we will be able to answer many of the requirements that are needed for the local and regional market. We are looking into, of course, not just providing the robotic mobile printer, but also gantry systems, gantry systems that are not necessarily the way they are being done currently with other providers, such as Cobod or Black Buffalo or any of these companies. We're trying to avoid making these very huge bulky printers and making, let's say, a nimble gantry system.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll talk about this in the next few months. We should have something for the market to see.
Yeah, it sounds, if it's not like Black Buffalo, that means it's not a system on tracks per se. Maybe it's a system on wheels or something along those lines. I don't know. That's just my speculation.
We're working on it. We already have something in mind. But again, the whole point is that we don't want to look at the printer as the solution. We want to see the process, the entire process, how, in construction. One of the major issues, especially, with the multi-unit construction, with big projects, not just the printer and the motion and the movement of the printer, the feeding system, right? I mean, the how do you get the cement to the printer? And so now not only you have the issue of moving the printer, but also the issue of moving the pump and all of this stuff. So all of these were taken into consideration, more, let's say, Jared, from a not just technology perspective, but also from a process perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So really we want to give the client a solution. We don't want to give them a printer. We want to give them a solution out of many solutions that we have. And this is one thing that is honestly lacking in the industry. All of it. I want to be honest, is that everybody's trying to sell a printer. This is the wrong approach. You have to come and say, I'm providing you with a solution. I'm providing you with a service. Printer is part of it. It's the entire ecosystem around it, material and pumping and feeding system and all of the stuff, plus cost, like you said. So that's what TAM Vinci is doing.
While at the same time setting realistic expectations, and I guess your clients understand that each project brings new challenges to the table usually, and so there's some learning curve going to be involved in almost every project, right?
Absolutely true. I mean, we're look, and this is still a young technology, even with all which is nice. Like I think one thing you said the other day is. There's more projects right now, although still nothing. Doesn't register on the construction project exactly. But I think you mentioned that we were from 1,000 Google searches, now we're into the millions of. So people are interested in this. There aren't enough projects being done globally, as far as I know, that reflect what the technology should be, where right now, where it can actually help propel it further and faster. So it is young, but I mean, every project has its own merit, every project has its own challenges, every project has its own issues. Mm-hmm. But you can take all of the learning lessons from your previous projects and apply them, and to the point where you have a pretty much concise system that you can offer to the client.
Yeah, I mean, it seems promising to me, because if you can get 25% improvement on the next one, then maybe you get 15% improvement on the one after that, and another 10%, and another 5%. And then even when you're doing like 1% improvements, that's still huge in the construction realm. So there's like so much runway to improve, and in terms of experience and people's expectations, the material, the technology, there's almost no aspect that can't be improved to some degree.
This is correct. Yeah, you can improve definitely on the speed. You can improve on the cost significantly. You can improve on the design, how much you can what kind of designs you can actually deliver, on the size of the final product, how big it will be. So yes, all of them. There's much improvement to be done in all of these. But I think the major one point that everybody's looking at is reduction in cost. There's also the sustainability issue that no one is mentioning. I think that this technology holds probably the most promise of all to have a net zero type of emission. So, by cutting the number of laborers that come, by cutting formwork, waste, hopefully we'll have green mix eventually, recycled material, and I mean there's really no reason why we cannot 3D print gypsum board. from all of the used and wasted gypsum. These can be recycled. So there's a lot of areas where this technology can actually, give society. And again, our next projects, for sure the price is gonna be less. Our next projects, for sure, we're gonna be faster. And in our project, for sure, we're gonna provide a better service for the client, simply because we've learned a lot.
Yeah. And that's just going to continue compounding as you.
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
So there's another big project in Dubai, the Municipality building. Apes coordinated, got the Guinness World Record for the biggest 3D printed building in the world. Do you have any insights on that project, or maybe being in the industry, you've communicated with people who worked on that?
Yeah, again, yes, of course. One of our previous engineer was on that project, and we had a lot of discussions about what happened in that project, up to a certain level. My understanding is the project took a long time. So the speed, so at the time, municipality was looking at it as a learning curve for them. They wanted to understand the technology because it's something that they're adopting right now. I don't know if you know, but it is a business. It is now a licensed business at the municipality to 3D print in concrete. I don't know if anybody in the world has that. So this is a big plus for Dubai to be able to do that. So they wanted to learn what is this technology, how it works and all of this stuff. And I think they got the project with Episcore, and they had the printer here, and it was printing in situ. It's a very large building, 2 floors, I believe, or multi-floor. Again, similar to the CyBe project that we did, the printer was moved in several locations. So
I think 32, if I remember.
Exactly. So it would print, then they would, lift it, move it, put it, and print again. The project, I think, the 3D printing part took over more than a year, as far as I know. But it wasn't an issue for the municipality. They were not looking at the speed. They were looking at learning the technology itself. What I understand is the formwork was not, I think, 3D printed. It was done a traditional way, with plywood and stuff. Simply because the material that was used was not capable of being the formwork. In both of our projects that we did, we used the material as a formwork for the reinforced columns. Other than that, also same day they were hit by the same issues, I think, cracks and all of this stuff. So, but it was a good project. I think that they showcased the municipality learned a lot from it. They showcased the technology for themselves, and they were able to produce this building. Other than that, I don't know a lot about what they did.
Yeah, I'd imagine that 1 year figure includes a lot of the prep time, and so maybe the print time is a little shorter than that. And they just had the printer, like the Cobod Project, they printed in 4 or 5 days, but they had the printer there for probably a couple of weeks or so, if not longer.
Yes, we had the Cobod printer on site for almost, erected in place for almost 2 months. But
testing.
Like I said, the first few weeks. We had issues. It was the first, installation of the Bod 2, I think, anywhere in the world. So there were issues technically to handle that. When we started printing, then we finished the walls, interior and exterior walls of the villa in about 4 or 5 days.
And you knew it was the first time they were installing a Bod 2.
Yeah, of course.
And so, with those kind of expectations in mind, was Cobod, were they good at working with you and accommodating and addressing the issues?
Yes, and the initial for they send their engineers to be able to troubleshoot. Yes, although I do have some comments here, but I'm not going to say them. So they did help us make it work, actually. I think it was in everybody's interest to make sure that this project was a success. So, but there are a few things that I actually didn't like what happened at the time, but it's okay. And then we printed in 4 or 5 days the villa. The problem was the client wanted to 3D print the parapets as well. I don't know why, but they wanted to 3D print the parapets. And so there were a lot of on top, yeah. So we casted the roof, and we basically, the reason why it got delayed so long, because I think we were done in 3rd week of October with 3D printing the walls. And after casting the roof and everything, we just waited a bit longer for the parapets. The parapets went very high, up to I think 8 meters, 7 or 8 meters, so it's almost 2 floors. Maybe not, maybe 6 meters. But again, the reason why, because there were a lot of design changes that the client wanted. So that's why it stayed there. But yeah, it was done earlier than we could have removed the printer earlier than that.
So moving forward, is your concentration strictly in Dubai?
No. I mean, we're focusing on Dubai. We're using Dubai as a springboard, if you wish. We're doing a lot of research. We're working with a couple of universities here as a research and development. Saudi is a big market for 3D printing. They have massive construction projects. So that's one of the areas that we're focusing also as well on. So the UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia. We do get from Kuwait sometimes, but no, primarily these 2 countries. And I think that looking at the resources from all aspects, I think it's more than at this point adequate. If you go now and you want 20 printers, no one can provide you 20 printers right now. I don't think anyone has the production capabilities to provide 20 printers in a reasonable amount of time. And usually these construction projects are very time sensitive. So the client comes saying, I want to start building after 2 months. So yeah, it's gonna be primarily UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Saudi Arabia for the foreseeable, for at least next 2 years.
Yeah, it's interesting. Every company has the same 4-month lead time, pretty much 16 weeks, 4 months. It's
a nice problem to have, that you can have a backlog of orders, but at some point, client will not tolerate that. They say, I want it now, or you lose my business, and they will not come back and buy printer again. Also, there's the issue of support. I think many of them don't have the proper support. They're severely understaffed, so they sell a printer and then you're on your own in a sense. So that's also another big issue.
Yeah, it's tricky. I haven't heard of any companies that purchased a printer that are now profitable with that printer. They're getting like a positive ROI on the printer. So that's maybe some exist, but I haven't come across them. And generally, when people make an investment in hundreds of thousands of dollars, they're expecting some kind of return, unless they have a big enough marketing budget and understand that it's going to get them publicity or something like that. So for the companies, even companies that are selling printers now and maybe generating profit, is it sustainable? Like it kind of needs to get that ROI point where people are making money from purchasing, and then it explodes, and they need to. Their biggest concern is making as many printers as they can, right?
Right, correct. That's a very big issue right now. Is for companies who are buying the printers as a service provider, where they want to build projects, and there aren't enough projects right now, as far as I see it, to justify the purchase of the machine. And you're right. I think I don't know the numbers, but I can guess that no one's really making any profit. So you buy, like you said, I think the printers range from $200,000 robotic base to over $1 million for a gantry system. So if you look at that, and again, like I said, you look at it from a production perspective, manufacturing perspective, then you should be able to be having at least X number of days per year where this printer is in the field. And if it's not, then you're gonna increase your daily rate of the printer, of the usage. And then again, it adds to the cost of the project, and the client will refuse, and you're back to square one.
I don't think it's impossible though that a company could get an ROI at this stage, like especially with some of the garden features or some like things like benches. Benches can be thousands of dollars. Sculptures like the Burj Al Arab building. I know a lot of people from the 500,000 people that saw on TikTok were like, how much does that cost? We want to buy it maybe. But
Right.
if you were to get enough clients for projects like that, I mean, I think that, they were able to print 3 objects a day. They could probably, in optimized situations, print like 6 or even more if they were using both sides of the printer. Maybe even moving stuff out, they could do more than that. But it seems like there's potential for that ROI, but it's elusive. You can't just print whatever you want and expect to make a profit. It's like you need to find the profitable sectors or something.
I agree. I think from a business owner perspective, now I'm talking. The large expensive printers that are primarily for constructing buildings and houses, right now the ROI is very difficult to achieve, and it's going to take years to get ROI. The smaller printers that are a bit cheaper and can do the benches and the smaller projects, let's say, these can have a serious ROI. Yeah, they can actually make profit. So from this is very important, and that's one of the reasons why we chose Twente, is because they do provide these
Range.
smaller, exactly, they do provide the smaller, which you've seen the Burj Al Arab, you've seen the architecture. Everybody's crazy about these things. Whereas trying to sell, and also the lead time in sales perspective, the sales cycle for a Burj Al Arab is few days, a week, 2. Sales cycle for a villa or a building is months. To get the designs, approvals, all of the stuff. So you have to take all of these into consideration. So yeah, your big printer will have a lot of that time, and as a owner of that printer, you have issues. Did I make myself clear?
Yeah. So your business, 3DVinci, there's tons of printers around here. Obviously you have a lot of experience 3D printing all kinds of different objects. Have you looked into metal printing or any other types of 3D printing, or is your focus strictly construction at the moment?
Like I said, we started with plastic and resin, and we have all kind of production printers. But right now, we have them. It's already been, depreciated. So it's already paid and all of this. So, but yes, right now, 100% focus on concrete printing.
Okay.
So 100%, yeah. We still do some projects that are related to. Look, one of the things that I don't want to talk anymore about concrete printing. I want to talk construction printing. For example, many companies now are reaching to us to say, okay, can we use large-scale plastic as part of construction? Can we use, like I said, gypsum? Is there a way that, and I know there's a way, I've already seen it. Is there a way that we can use gypsum for it? And the reason why this is being driven is because of the need to innovate, and because of the requirements that are mandated here to have 25% 3D printed by 2030. So many of the gypsum companies here are, they really want to work with us to see if we can use their material somehow, some way, pulverize, add some binder to them, and see if we can 3D print it. So 100% focus on construction printing, let's say.
So if it's too early to have an expectation of an ROI potentially, what's the ideal profile of a client of yours?
Ideal profile is someone. We cater to different verticals and horizontals. So the profile of the client would have to be architects who do designs of landscaping elements, who do design of architectural elements, and you can also do design for smaller housing units. Some of our ideal clients would be a property developer who again have units that need to be built, plus any architectural or landscaping or any elements that are part of the community that they provide. Also, we're looking at things like, for example, underwater habitat. We're looking at so all of these will keep your cash flow going. You get your ROI, and you can be profitable while waiting for the large development projects.
Underwater habitats like for fish.
Underwater, what you do, we have requests to 3D print coral reefs, correct?
Cool.
And again, you cannot do it without a robot. I mean, with something that is just, you have to have these nice forms, and so now at the affordable price, of course. So you should be able to provide these, and there's a lot of requirements for these kind of things.
Yeah.
They have algae grow on them. Of course, research universities always. But the universities don't look at them as profit. Usually you try to work with them,
which makes them an ideal client.
True. They are. I mean, and the way we look at it is we have an association with American University in Dubai. We're gonna form a 3D printing center of excellence for 3D construction printing. And one of the things that we look at is to have resources. Right now you cannot, if you want to hire people, there's a lot of big learning curve that they have to go through, and so even if you have projects, you cannot find enough resources that can help you with these projects. So the universities are good also client from a, not just client, but they can also give us engineers, future engineers.
Yeah. There's a lot of value in that, having people who understand something about the technology and having a place for students to be able to learn about it before they jump into the working world. I mean, a lot of people want to get involved in it because it's futuristic, and they think it has automation is a good field to get into as we move to a world where everything is technology oriented. Without education systems in place, it'll be tough, like you're saying, to source people who can work in the space. Moving forward, do you think that the 2030 mandate is a realistic expectation? I mean, considering there's so many skyscrapers here.
No, yeah. I think it's a good goal to have. I think it's definitely is it doable that all 25%? There hasn't been any thing specific about what is considered as 25%. But at least putting the mandate just basically, make everybody work even harder to make sure that we can reach that particular goal. So even if we achieve 10%, it's still amazing, or 15%, or but 25%, it depends on how they will define the 25%.
Yeah, and that's only 9 years away. So it seems to me like if you were really going to be serious about enforcing something like that, if it's like just advice or it's actually a rule that it has to be that way, you'd want to work your way up to it. So maybe next year every building needs to incorporate 2% 3D printed material by, whether it's by weight or by
dollar value,
square feet,
yeah.
You can attribute to building. Dollar value is a good one too. And then in the next year you do 4%, and the next year you do 6%. I can't imagine in 2029 people are building skyscrapers with all poured concrete, and then 2030 all of a sudden just...
No, I agree, and I think that's the plan. I think the plan is, we should have started a couple of years ago, that every year 2%, but right now it got more serious starting this year. Remember COVID and all of this stuff. So the 2% additional every year, maybe now it's 3. And I think one of the other issues is probably they start applying the points system, are using 3D printing in construction. So they will start with contractors and architects and developers, how much of your project is 3D printed.
Maybe they can do tax incentives?
Precisely, correct. Or if you apply for a project, then you have more points, just like the lead system, you know, so they will start doing something. I imagine, I don't know, but I think if you want to really push it and then really make it happen, then you have to sort of set up these kind of guidelines.
What other things should people interested in this industry look forward to, and especially people considering when is the right time to jump in? They're like, I'm sold, I love the idea. The technology is improving so quickly. Do I jump in now? Do I jump in 2 years, 3 years?
Look, I think that you're looking from a client perspective or from a
client perspective. Like somebody's watching the video because they're interested in 3D printed concrete and they're waiting to pull the trigger and they want to wait till it's appropriate time.
No, I think they can do it at any time. The only difference is going to be what kind of experience you will get. So I think down the road, let's say if you look a few years down the road, we hope that everything is really digitized. Everything is digital. So right now we're still working with some with the older, let's say, software and with the older approach to this particular technology. I think down the road what we'd like to have is a client, and this is what I've been trying to sell to the big developers, is don't have all of your buildings the same. You know, whether in the US or in Dubai or anywhere else, and for cost effectiveness and for many reasons, usually, you know, all of the houses are the same. If not, you know, you have type A, B, and C, and then you select one of them, right? So you're living in a house, your neighbor is the same. What I'm trying to say is what this technology can bring with digitization and freedom of design and you know, complexity, and it doesn't cost you more if you are using the same footprint, is mass customization. And if we cannot sell that and the client is convinced about that, then it's a problem. If I am an individual, a client that wants to build a house for my own, then what I would like to have this technology be at in a few years is to say, all right, this is what I want to do, and then you sit with an architect with a 3D design, you know, and then you change it as you go. You know, this is how simple it is, and then you just say, okay, I want to print this. That would be the ultimate goal, and then it will take a different shape altogether. Similarly with large developers is where they come and they say, all right, you have you know, thousands of these units and you have thousands of clients. All right, choose the villa that you want. It's not type A, B, and C. No, okay, start with type A and change it the way you want to, as long as you're keeping the same constraints available. You know, to change the wall here, you can do that. We're not going to charge you more.
Yeah, changing as you go is a really interesting thing. I haven't thought of it all before, especially if you want to change the size of the window or something. It's like, in theory, it's something that should be so easy for a printer. But when you actually consider 3D printing, it's like you already uploaded the step file that's been converted into G-code. And if you move that window a few inches, that might change the optimal path. And so maybe you need to instruct the printer to do a less optimal path that fits the first layers you printed, or however. Like it might be one of those problems that seems really simple, but actually becomes very complicated once you get into the software challenges.
No, I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about, yes, true, but what I'm talking about is if you're developing a community and you have a master plan, and you're selling it to potential clients, and then the clients can come and they can actually choose from the different designs that you have and alter it, and then say that's it, yeah, and then you say, okay, it's done.
Isn't that easy now though? Or
if you want to do it, no, because usually all of these are done in precast, at least here. I don't know how it is in the US, but here it's done.
But with the printer, I'm saying.
With the printer, it should be very easy.
As long as you start from the beginning of that house.
Correct. It has to be from the beginning. If you do it at the later stage it becomes a bit more difficult. So that's where I think, like when you're asking me where it's going, this is where it's going to be. But you can still right now experiment with the technology and see the ease of how it can build. It doesn't. Everybody should understand. It doesn't build the entire house. We still have to do the horizontal elements the traditional way, but all of the vertical elements can be 3D printed. They can be 3D printed with ease. Mm-hmm. You get a house that is practically a castle with the current material. I mean, this material is, the durability is amazing. So you have real hard concrete, fireproof, waterproof, to last for you and your kids for generations. So this from that perspective only is really priceless.
Yeah, I'd imagine in the future when there's more 3D printed houses, the market becomes bigger, the addressable market is more attractive for venture capital, investment banking to invest in different softwares. There could be just an app on your phone where you just click and drag rooms together and decide, I'd like this side, and pull it, and then there's no reason that it couldn't create the G code from something that you just, like a 5-year-old could throw together, and then also do the structural calculations. If it knows the width of the walls and the size of the walls, at that point, do you need a structural engineer even? Can the software just say, okay, you have this span of wall, you need columns here, or something?
You don't need an architect, you don't need an architect, you don't need a structural engineer too. Yeah, I mean, I think probably it can be done very fast with the current software tools and AI and learning.
But is there an ROI for somebody developing that right now? Maybe.
Always early adopters are, it's high risk but high reward.
And then what's the time horizon? Like maybe that's a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year return.
I think the problem is not in that per se. I think the problem is with society accepting this, especially also the authorities accepting this kind of approach. Ultimately, someone from their home with an app or on their laptop, they can iPad, they can design their home, and that's what I want, and they can have even have augmented reality view of it and all of the stuff, and order it online, and then it goes through the entire approval process. They get the certificate, you can start printing, or you can start building, and then just have contractors who are specialized in this kind of thing, where they go and they lay the foundation, they bring the printer, print it, finish everything, MEP and all of the stuff, and it's done in 6 weeks. It's not science fiction. It's reality. It can be done. It's not that difficult, but it's such a big social change that it's gonna take some time. But definitely, I mean, anyone who's willing to invest in that, I'll be happy to work with them.
How should people reach out to you if they're interested in doing a project with you?
By email. They can reach me at, should I say my email?
Sure.
Edouard B at tamvinci.com, or you can visit our website, either tamvinci, TAM, vinci.com, one word, or 3DVinciCreations.com, 3DVinci Creations with it's one word.com, and you can send contact details, and we'll be happy to reach out.
Cool, and I'll put a TAM Vinci link in the description of the video too. Perfect. Anything else we should touch on?
No, I think that was pretty nice, Jared. I hope that I tried to be as honest and as open as I can be. There are certain things I cannot, especially with the companies that I worked with. I want to be as objective as possible. And I truly hope the work that you're doing is amazing. Honestly, I really applaud you for this. When you first started, 2-3 years ago, I thought really someone covering that area of the world of the business, of any business, and look at you now. It's amazing. It's really good.
Thanks.
And
It's
it's
great
just-
talking to you because I think the same about your work. The work you're doing is amazing, and especially the different companies you get to work with. You get like a really unique perspective, and I think this is one of the best podcast episodes because you have the different perspectives from each company. And as opposed to when I'm interviewing the CEOs of the companies selling the printers, you don't have as much of a prerogative. It's more about the experiences you had rather than trying to sell them a printer. You're kind of just passionate about the technology and making projects work however they can best work, as opposed to saying this is the one-size-fits-all solution for everyone.
True. No, and I think that I'm happy that I have this this privilege, if you wish, that I've worked with so many providers, and I know the pros and cons and ins and outs of working with these organizations and also with different clients. So this is wealth to have. Actually, it's very nice to have. And thank you for having this podcast. It was really nice, and I hope that we'll see you again in Dubai soon. We have few projects in the pipeline, so next time we'll take you around to show you these projects that we're doing. Yesterday, Sheikh Mohammed announced, I don't know if you read it, 60 billion dirhams over the next, I think, 15 or 20 years to build for the local Emiratis, around 11,000 units, housing units. So this is an opportunity for 3D printing to be part of this offering. I hope that we will be able to make this technology business viable, not just viable, business viable, that it's, again, like we always say, faster, better, cheaper, especially the last part of it, cheaper. And I think we're not too far off.
Yeah, thanks for joining me today for this podcast. Here in your office, the 3DVinci office, or the 3D creation.
TAM Vinci is fine.
And I can promise you I'll be back, and hopefully then we can do a second podcast episode when there's been maybe 3 more, 4 more, however many more projects are complete by then.
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.